Amid the vast Great Lakes forests and the cold shoreline, Michigan holds a silence-filled paradox. Its status as the center of the automotive industry does not erase its other side, a landscape filled with the remains of failed settlements, dead mining towns, and legends that still live on even though the people have long since gone. Some of these places lost their populations because of disease, while others were isolated by brutal economic change. The silence in places like Pere Cheney or Freda is not just the absence of sound, but the weight of history pressing down on anyone who passes through. Today, we will explore Michigan's darker side through 15 small towns that hold grim memories, from paranormal phenomena to traces of real tragedy. In Crawford County, among dense pine forests, there is a place that can now only be recognized by a few gravestones left standing in the middle of overgrown brush. Pere Cheney was founded in 1874 as a promising logging center, but its history turned into a story of mass death. 2 waves of diphtheria struck the town, wiping out much of the population in a short time. Out of desperation and fear of contagion, nearby residents eventually burned the town to the ground in the early 20th century to stop the disease from spreading. Today, the area is considered one of the most cursed places in Michigan. Local legends often tell of a woman accused of witchcraft who supposedly cursed the town before she was executed. Although that is difficult to prove historically, ghost hunters often report seeing figures among the trees and feeling sudden drops in temperature around the old cemetery. Pere Cheney stands as a reminder of how quickly a small civilization can be erased by nature and by human fear. Unlike Pere Cheney, which vanished, Fayette still stands as a preserved ghost town in the Upper Peninsula. Located at Snail Shell Harbor, it was once a prosperous iron-smelting center from 1867 to 1891. But once natural resources ran low and technology changed, Fayette was simply abandoned. The giant stone furnace structures and wooden houses facing white limestone cliffs create a striking image that is both beautiful and unsettling. Walking among the empty buildings in Fayette creates a strange feeling, as if time stopped moving. Even though it is now managed as a state park, the sense of silence here remains very strong, especially when fog rolls in from Lake Michigan. Stories about the sound of footsteps inside the empty old hotel are often shared by staff and visitors. Next, many people know Mackinac Island as an upscale tourist destination with no motor vehicles. But beneath its Victorian beauty, the island holds a deeply bloody history. During the War of 1812, it became the site of fierce fighting. Fort Mackinac, the fort that stands on the hill, holds records of executions and tragic accidents. The ban on cars makes the island feel as if it has returned to the 19th century, and at night, when the last tourists return to the mainland, the atmosphere changes completely into something quiet and mysterious. One of the most famous places is Mission Point Resort, which is said to be haunted by a student who died tragically decades ago. In addition, there are many reports of paranormal activity at the Grand Hotel. The island's history as a native burial ground before the arrival of Europeans adds another layer to the mystical story that surrounds it. From history to the unexplained, we arrive in Paulding. This small town might have been forgotten if not for the Paulding Light. The phenomenon is a mysterious light that appears at the end of a dead-end road that was once a railroad line. Since it was first reported in the 1960s, thousands of people have come to witness the light, which continues to appear with surprising consistency. Many scientific explanations have been suggested, from headlights reflecting off a nearby highway to swamp gas. But for local residents, the light remains the legend of a railroad conductor who died in a work accident and now wanders the area carrying his lantern. The nighttime atmosphere along the Paulding Trail, surrounded by dense forest with no streetlights at all, creates real tension for anyone waiting for the light to appear in complete darkness. Meanwhile, Luther, located in Lake County, carries a different kind of energy. The town is not completely empty, but it bears the weight of failure from a religious settlement project in the past. In the late 1800s, a businessman tried to build an ideal town here, but a series of major fires and economic hardship destroyed that dream. The town now feels like a place stuck in the past, with a few old buildings that look fragile and streets that are extremely quiet. The eerie feeling in Luther comes from its isolation and its history as a town that nearly died. In the surrounding area, there are many abandoned houses and forests that seem to be slowly swallowing what remains of the buildings. The silence in Luther is not just peaceful, but feels as if it is hiding secrets about a life that never reached its full potential. Deep in Ogemaw County, there is Damon, a ghost town now almost completely swallowed by the thick woods of Huron National Forest. At its peak in the 1890s, Damon was a logging town with a population of several hundred people, complete with a hotel, post office, and school. Once the timber ran out, the town was abandoned quickly. Today, only a few concrete foundations and one wooden building still remain, surrounded by tightly growing trees. The setting is extremely isolated. If you drive here, you will pass long dirt roads with no cell signal. The atmosphere can feel deeply oppressive for anyone not used to the wild forests of Michigan. Many hunters passing through the area report a strong feeling of being watched, adding to Damon's reputation as one of the eeriest spots in the Lower Peninsula. Then there is Seney, which was often called Hell on Earth during its peak in the late 19th century. This Upper Peninsula town was not haunted by spirits, but by the brutality of its own history. As a center for loggers, Seney was filled with bars, brothels, and uncontrolled street violence. It was said that safety was so poor here that the law barely existed. Today, Seney is a quiet small village, but the reputation of its past still lingers. The ground here seems to hold the memory of bloody fights and the cruelty of frontier life. Even though modern life has returned to normal, many feel that the shadow of that dark past still hangs over every corner of town, making it one of the places with the most tangible dark side in Michigan's history. No less unsettling than Seney, Big Bay, located north of Marquette, is also a place with a chilling criminal history. At Big Bay Point Lighthouse, a keeper named William Pryor is said to haunt the building after his tragic death, which was tied to the search for his missing son. But the creepy side of this town does not end there. The town was also the setting of a real murder at the Lumberjack Tavern in 1952, which later inspired the classic novel and film Anatomy of a Murder. The combination of an isolated lighthouse on the edge of the harsh waters of Lake Superior, a murder history, and the surrounding forest gives Big Bay a very heavy atmosphere. Today, the lighthouse operates as an inn where guests often report doors opening on their own and knocking sounds coming from the walls. Moving closer to Grand Rapids, we come to Ada, a small town that looks peaceful but holds one of Michigan's most famous urban legends, the Lady in White. The legend centers on Findlay Cemetery and the town's iconic covered bridge. The story tells of a woman who was caught having an affair by her husband and then died in a tragic way. Unlike the ghost towns in the northern forests, the horror in Ada feels more personal and melancholic. Many local residents claim to have seen the figure of a woman in a white dress drifting near the graves or along quiet roads at night. The presence of the old wooden bridge, which often creaks when the wind blows, adds to the classic horror atmosphere that keeps Ada on the list of the creepiest towns in the state. Located along the cliffs of Lake Superior on the Quay Peninsula, Freda is visually haunting. Once a copper processing mill town, Freda now leaves behind massive concrete ruins that look like the skeleton of a monster along the water's edge. The sound of Lake Superior's waves crashing against the cliffs below the ruins creates a deeply bleak soundtrack. Freda was never officially incorporated as its own town, but the community that lived there truly vanished when the mill closed in 1967. The extreme weather conditions on this northern peninsula have accelerated the decay of the buildings, creating a maze of ruins that is both dangerous and attractive to urban explorers. The solitude in Freda, with strong winds blowing in from the lake, creates an extraordinary sense of isolation. Next, even though Marquette is the largest city in the Upper Peninsula, it has small corners that feel deeply unsettling. Attention often turns to its old lighthouse and the historic buildings in the downtown area. One of the creepiest places is Old City Hall and several buildings on the campus of Northern Michigan University, which are said to have unseen residents. Marquette's history as a major port for iron ore shipping means many shipwreck accidents happened off its shores. Thousands of sailors lost their lives in the cold waters beyond the Marquette docks. The city's extremely long and harsh winters, when it is buried under heavy snow for months, often intensify the feeling of isolation and depression that feeds local horror stories in this port city. In Oakland County, the town of Holly offers a more refined kind of horror, but one that is still tense. The center of all these stories is the Holly Hotel. The building has mysteriously burned down twice in its history, and each time it was rebuilt. Paranormal activity here is reported so often that it has become one of the most investigated locations in Michigan. Many visitors report smelling a strong floral perfume, seeing the apparition of a man in a tall hat, and even noticing silverware move on its own. As you can feel, the atmosphere of downtown Holly, with its 19th century style and old brick buildings, creates the perfect setting for these stories. The town remains active and lively, but the shadows in the corners of its old hotel never truly go away. far to the north at the tip of the Quay Peninsula, we come to Delaware. It is a former copper mining town that is now almost uninhabited. What remains is the Delaware Mine Tour, which takes visitors deep underground. Inside the mine's dark, cold, and damp tunnels, the deadly hardship of 19th century labor feels very real. Outside, the site is filled with rusting equipment and wooden buildings slowly collapsing with age. Life in Delaware today is only a small remnant of the thousands who once lived there. When snow begins to cover the roads in autumn, Delaware becomes a deeply silent place, where the only sounds are the hiss of wind through the trees and the creak of old rusting metal. Just a few miles from Delaware is Central, another mining town with a unique tradition. Even though it has been a ghost town since the copper mine closed in 1898, every July the descendants of Central's original residents return to the old church there for a memorial service. The eerie feeling in Central comes from houses still standing with furniture that seems to be waiting for their owners to return. This is not just a ruin, but a town preserved in a dying state. The silence of Central's church and its cemetery hidden in the woods creates an atmosphere that feels both religious and mystical, making anyone feel like an intruder among the memories of the dead. To close this list, we head to the shore of Lake Huron to a place called Forester. This town is small and barely noticeable on the map, yet it holds one of Michigan's saddest ghost stories. Minnie Quay. In 1876, 15-year-old Minnie was forbidden by her mother from meeting her boyfriend, who was a sailor. When news came that his ship had sunk, a heartbroken Minnie threw herself into the cold waters of Lake Huron and never returned. To this day, locals and beach visitors claim to see the figure of a young girl standing at the water's edge, staring out toward the wide horizon. Forester today is only a quiet point along the highway, but the legend of Minnie Quay gives it an atmosphere filled with haunting sadness. Exploring these small Michigan towns reminds us that a place is not built only from wood and stone, but also from memory and tragedy. From the industrial ruins of Freda to the sorrowful legend of Forester, each location shows how fragile human existence is in the face of time and nature. These towns may have lost their glory, but the stories they left behind will always remain part of Michigan's mysterious identity. In the end, true horror is not about what appears in the darkness, but about what we feel when we realize that everything we build may one day fall silent.